Hi everyone, I'm Pierre Hérol, Research Assistant on the Integrate project for AgroCampus West in France. During this video, I will present to you the main results of the surveys the different partners of Integrate carried out from September 2017 and September 2018. We will discuss the development of integrated multitrophic aquaculture, its issues and constraints in the Atlantic area. But first things first. As you may know, aquaculture's production exceeds fisheries production for human consumption since 2014. We are experiencing an increase of the aquaculture production for several decades, but this growth hides huge disparities. While Asian countries and especially China still have positive growth rates, the production in Europe has been stagnating for a decade. The stagnation of the aquaculture production in Europe has diverse reasons. Environmental issues are mainly the first point that comes to mind. These issues are related to eutrophication, genetic pollution because of fish escapes, the spread of disease, impact on the benthic environment. The competition for marine space with other marine activities is also one of the key points that can deny aquaculture development. And finally, social acceptability or non-acceptability can lead to the rise of an opposition from different actors to cancel the creation of aquaculture sites. To face these challenges, the concept of IMTA emerged. But what is IMTA? We can draw a definition based on the acronym. Aquaculture is a cultivation of aquatic organisms like fish, shellfish, and seaweed. Multitrophic means different species of different links in the food chain are cultivated. And integrated refers to the fact that these species are cultivated in the same area and interact with each other. The problem is this definition doesn't help to figure out what an IMTA system is, and we have no consensual nor legal definition of IMTA. Still, different researchers have been working on IMTA and they drew the main characteristics of these systems. The main interests of these practices are an environmental efficiency, as the wastes of specific species become the resources of the others. We can also talk about resource optimization. The notion of the valorization of the co-productions is also very important in IMTA systems, as the different species can be commercialized, and this leads to a diversification of the producer's activity and a better ecological but also economic resilience of its system. This term, IMTA, is quite new, but the concept of integrated aquaculture is not. It exists at least since the 15th century in Western Africa, since the beginning of the second millennium in South America, you may know the Chinampas, and even before, during the 5th century before Christ, if we consider the rice fish cultivation in Asia as IMTA. So can we talk about novelty or innovation? Maybe not. Still, this concept gives itself talked about and many projects have been already set up to study and develop IMTA. We could talk about Genesis, CCASE, and more recently iDream, or the current project IMTA Effect, and of course Integrate. But let's now come back to the core of this video and let's try to answer this question. How to develop IMTA in the Atlantic area? To do so, we will focus on the barriers and the levers we identify for the development of IMTA and on the stakeholders' position toward IMTA. During the first step of the survey, we ran an overview of the IMTA sector in the Atlantic area. The objectives were to identify the IMTA facilities already implemented and to create a map of these different sites. We also ran preliminary interviews with these structures in order to collect information about barriers and levers encountered by the industry to develop IMTA. This first work has been achieved through 30 semi-structured interviews. What did we learn from these interviews? IMTA is not a clear concept. Many different producers considered as IMTA certain practices we did not integrate to the project. Some others did not call IMTA certain practices we would have called so. IMTA also suffers from a lack of interest from the industry. Thus, we decided to run a complementary study with two lines of research. The first one regarding social acceptability and the second one regarding the interest of producers and other stakeholders for IMTA. We ran a second set of interviews through case studies with specific stakeholders identified as particularly relevant to collect data regarding those two lines of research. The interviews allows us to understand the perception of IMTA and the interest for IMTA from the industry and local actors, but also to collect precise information about IMTA site's implementation. The results of the different interviews were gathered into an analysis model which allowed us to define the main barriers and levers for the development of IMTA in the Atlantic area. The results of this first step of the survey allowed us to draw a map of the location of the IMTA facilities set up in the Atlantic area. As you can see, 12 commercial IMTA facilities have been found in the 5 partner countries, as well as 12 experimental facilities. Actually, 2 points on this map do not represent one site, but a complete sector of activity with multiple companies working on IMTA systems. The first one is located in Brittany in France, where producers grow oysters and periwinkles on the foreshore, using the interaction between these species to save work time and increase growth rates and quality of the oysters. The second point is located in the salted marshes of Charente-Maritime in France, where shellfish farmers also use their earthen ponds to grow shrimps during summer to increase oysters' quality, growth rate, and also to diversify their production. The different points on this map represent a very large variety of IMTA systems. You can find, for example, an open sea system with non-trophic interactions between the different species in production and with no interaction with any other marine activity. At the contrary, we encountered semi-closed systems based on a semi-extensive production benefiting from the trophic interactions of the species. These are only examples, and every site on this map has its own specificities, and it reveals the complexity of talking about IMTA while presenting such different activities. The main characteristics of the IMTA sector of each partner country have been synthesized in synthesis sheets available in the Work Package 6 Action 1 report you will soon find on the website. In these sheets, you will find a summary of the different systems implemented in the country and the main barriers and levers identified for the development of IMTA. As explained earlier, the data collected during the preliminary interviews and during the case studies have been gathered in an analysis model. Different indicators allowed us to run a proper analysis of this data via 2 lines of studies: the social acceptability and the producer's motivation to develop IMTA. The data from the different countries were gathered in a cross table for analysis, and we also checked our findings thanks to references overlap. We separated our results into 5 categories. Regarding the technical aspects, it appears that IMTA induces technical constraints and a technical complexity due to the fact that a company has to manage at least 2 species instead of only 1. It induces a skill cap for the employees, but this aspect can lead to a lever in terms of training and education. IMTA might be a good opportunity for educational structures to create new courses, but also for companies who want to acquire new production skills. In terms of regulations, the main barriers identified concern the governance and the planning of marine activities, as well as the delays encountered for the licensing. The levers pointed for the regulations focus mainly on the different ways IMTA might be economically sustainable, with the implementation, for example, of the polluter pays principle. The environmental barriers are mainly associated with the environmental benefits of IMTA in open seas that are discussed. As the bioremediation of fish waste by algae and shellfish is site-dependent, the environmental benefits of IMTA is questioned. Another issue is related to the environmental impact assessment, as there is poor information available regarding IMTA systems. Nonetheless, the environmental benefits of IMTA for land-based systems might contribute to the improvement of aquaculture's image and to its social acceptability. On a social point of view, many issues are remaining regarding marine space competition or the representativeness of NGOs and residents during the licensing. In relation with these findings, it is likely that the setup of communication and participatory tools might help improve the acceptance of aquaculture and IMTA. Another finding is related to the technical aspects, in that scientific cooperation with industry might help the companies to acquire new skills. Finally, the main findings are related to the economic field. The economic sustainability of IMTA systems and the heavy investment related to IMTA systems appeared as major issues for its development. The fact that additional workforce is needed to produce additional species, but also to valorize and commercialize these new products, is perceived as a constraint. The lack of insurance policies for the productions are also being underlined. However, IMTA has also been perceived as a good opportunity to diversify the activity of a company and improve its economical resilience with the opportunity to target new markets with new products. The second part of the study, aiming at obtaining precise information about the modalities of implementation of IMTA systems, has been undertaken thanks to the data collected during the case studies. A total of 33 interviews has been conducted during the 12 case studies, mainly with aquaculture producers, but also with professional structures, administrations, and other stakeholders. Here is a map of the different case studies we conducted. I insist on the fact that these systems are not numerous and very different in terms of location and practices. A summary of the activity of each site is presented in synthesis sheets in the Work Package 6 Action 2 report, soon available on the project website. You will find a clear description of the different systems, a story of its implementation and its particularities. The data from the different countries were also gathered in a cross table for analysis. The main characteristics of the sites and several indicators permitted to run a comparative analysis of the case studies. The main results underline that the main issues mainly concern the marine space competition and the negative interactions between the different activities. To solve these issues, a strong governance and the improvement of the planning management tools are required. On a general point of view too, the problem of visibility of aquaculture is also a big issue. There is a need for communication about the profession and not only about the products of aquaculture. Moreover, improving the representation of certain NGOs and residents would enable to set up a trustful situation and more transparency that would facilitate the discussion and the negotiation between local stakeholders and project holders. Toward these challenges that aquaculture has to face, IMTA should highlight its environmental benefits. Communication tools, as well as educational farms or prototypes, would enable the popularization of such systems and would help to improve aquaculture's image. In certain countries, the simplification of the regulation framework would also facilitate the access of aquaculture sites. Every species being submitted to specific regulations, it became very complicated to find sites where to develop IMTA systems. Obtaining new license to diversify its activity can sometimes be very difficult and take several years. Simplification of the process or the reduction of the time required to obtain these licenses would also facilitate the conversion to IMTA systems. At the beginning of the video, we introduced IMTA as a solution to solve several issues specific to European aquaculture. Still, our results highlighted that IMTA suffers the exact same issues of traditional aquaculture. So finally, what are the main advantages of IMTA? I think IMTA can solve several environmental issues specific to aquaculture, such as eutrophication, for example. It is true that the current technologies cannot prevent the impact on the benthic ecosystems and the genetic pollution, but research and development of new systems would probably lead to new associations to solve these issues. Finally, I would like to point the misunderstanding about the social acceptance issues. Many stakeholders use environmental arguments to contest the setup of new aquaculture sites, but this opposition is mainly based on marine space competition or incompatibility between residential activities and aquaculture production. The technical complexity of IMTA do not make producers disposed to develop IMTA system. The technicity of the naming can also generate mistrust for the consumers, leading to major issues for the valorization of the IMTA product, mainly based on its environmental friendly image. To end this video, I come back to the question how to develop IMTA in the Atlantic area. I think the definition of IMTA is crucial, especially because environmental issues are used as defense to prevent aquaculture expansion. Identifying the assets of each IMTA system according to the territorial context might help to better design the projects and to really make them fit the territory and make the local stakeholders appropriate the project. How IMTA can enhance the development of the territory? Is the environmental constraints the main issue? How IMTA can answer these environmental problems? These are the relevant questions to ask, and the best way to develop IMTA while defending its environmental benefits. Thank you very much for watching this video, and if you need further information, you will find the different references in the last slides of this presentation.